The other big thing we're going to refer to in regards to inheritance is working the other way, which is called the super. Means to pass up to parent class. So, in this instance, I have the new demo class. I created a new class called student. And let's think about the different kinds of students. There are high schoolers, there are undergraduates in college, and there are graduate students. The simplest example right now for you would be to be a high school student. They're all students, but they take on different responsibilities. So what all goes into making a student? Let's see. For example, all students for sure have a name, they have a grade, or they have, instead of a grade, let's do scores. They have a name and they have scores. So with that, the biggest difference between a high schooler, undergrad, and graduate is how these scores work. High school and undergraduate work pretty much the same. At most universities, 60% is the minimum you need to pass. In graduate school, it can vary anywhere from 70 to 80% that you need the minimum to pass. So that's where some of the different attributes of a student change. We could also do credits earned, which would be different. Those different kind of things. But we're just going to stick with a name, and we're going to stick with scores. We're going to create both a high schooler and a graduate student. So this may take a little bit, but let's go ahead and just set this up. We're going to set up two private variables. I'm going to set up private string my name. We're also going to set up private double my score, just to have those two attributes ready to go. We're going to build a constructor. So we're going to build two constructors. One that has no parameters in the event we don't have any entered, which then we would just make my name equal blank and my score equals 0. That's if our user doesn't enter anything. If they do, though, then we also want to have prepared something to receive their name and set them to the proper variables here. So we're going to create public student again, another constructor using parameters this time. So it'll be string name and double score. And all we're going to do with this constructor is set them equal to our private variables that we created here. So my name would equal name, so we can work with it for this instance, and my score equals score. Okay. The only other thing we need to do then is make these accessible, since we made these two private variables. Remember, these private variables, another term I never quite went over, this is known as encapsulation because we're protecting the data. So in this first instance, we created a default constructor. And then here we created another constructor. So now we're just making the data accessible to other classes. So it will look something like this. It'll be public string get name. This is an accessor. These are examples of accessor methods. And this will just simply return my name. And we're going to do the same for the score. Return my score. Okay, so our very basic student is completed. They have a name, they have a score. Probably the two biggest things you do worry about in high school, having a name and having a score. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create two different classes. So this student, if we go back to our little example here, this student is going to become our upper class. So right now, both of the other classes we're going to make take attributes from the student class. And we're going to draw out these boxes. Aren't they pretty? And the first one we're going to make is for, we'll do it for high school. So it's going to be called the high school class. No pun intended. So go here to Java. Remember, go up to the white plus sign. Go to the white paper with a green plus sign. Click on Java. And we're going to call it high school. Call it the high school class. And we're going to make the high school class extend the student class, because our high schoolers do take on the attributes of high school students. Very good. So then we need to first construct our high school student. So we create two constructors again. We create public high school, no real pun intended, and this is where the super word comes into play, because we already have this constructor over here in student where it's going to either do the blank construction or do a complete construction. So we're setting up the blank one here, so we're just going to say super, because it's referring to the blank method or the blank constructor with no parameters in the super class. The same can be done for the other class. Public high school, do string name, double score. They don't have to be the same names, but of course we can do that. And we're going to call super and pass down name and score. And there you have it. So let's see how I can label this for you. Accesses the student constructor, no parameters. And this here accesses the student constructor with parameters. Now, we're not out of the woods just yet as far as this class here goes, because we still need to access the information so that we can use it, because remember, that is a private variable, so it only belongs to this class. So we're going to call it public check pass. It's going to be blank. Ooh, I'm going to create string student equals, and we called it get name. It's mad because I need to, we'll call it public void, because it's not returning anything. It's just going to return the print line that we tell it to. So public student get name equals get name, so it's getting the name from the student class. So, and it's just mad because I haven't used it yet. And then double scores equals get score. So it's grabbing the information based off our constructor that we used already, and then we can just do a quick analysis. So for high school, if scores is greater than 60, then system.out.println, and we'll say that's student whoever has passed. That's what we'll say. If their score is greater than 60%, they passed. Else, and we'll just throw that up here, system.out.println student plus has failed. So let's, before we do the undergrad example, put this in action. So this is just taking on all the attributes from the student and creating the quick little high school. So we're going to go create our high schooler. So high school student 1 equals new high school. We're going to name them Bob, and they're going to have a 89.2%. Good for Bob. Okay, so then I think we just need to call upon student1 dot check pass, and this should tell us if Bob passed high school or not. Bob has passed. Let me do an example of a student failing, and then I will break for the undergrad just for a second demonstration. So high school student 2 equals new high school, and so we don't be too bad, we'll make Kevin get a 43.2. Student 2 dot check pass. Bob has passed, Kevin has failed. Now, you're saying this seems like a lot of extra work. It does initially, but when we're building very large programs, as we will be later in the course, you will want to have as much predefined as you can so you can access it a lot quicker. I'm going to break and then do a second video that demonstrates the same attribute with the graduate class to show how multiple extensions can work.